But we have an entire lineup by K-Speaker. We have the Mac Daddy K66MAX right here, as well as the entry-level K100 Plus. And today, we're going to put all three of these to test. You're going to hear what they sound like. We're going to do some analysis, and we're going to show the differences because each one of them has their pluses and minuses. Let's get to it. Now, first up, let's talk about the K100 Plus. Now, this is really the entry-level speaker. Now, what you're going to find is that it has 6 speakers built into it right there, and there's LEDs that is behind this. We'll show that here in a bit. One of the other things you're going to notice, this is something that's different from considering like the K66 series, is that all the buttons are here on the end if you want to be able to access the buttons. But don't worry, it also has a remote. We'll show that here in a second. But here is also something that's a little bit different. So on the K66 series, we'll show here in a minute, there's actually a cord that comes out and you have some plugins there. Everything on this one, as you can tell, plugs in right here. You have your power, as well as you have an auxiliary in, auxiliary out, which is basically a 3.5mm jack on each side. And you, of course, have your MP3, which is USB port, is what that is on this. Now, this also has a different mount system. Let me show you that. Now, let's talk about the K66 series. This is the top of the line from K-Speaker. Now, there are 3 different models when it comes to the K66. You have the Ultra, which is the 16-inch. This happens to be the middle of the road size one at the 25-inch, which is known as the Plus. And then we've got the Big Max that we're going to show here in a minute, which is 34 inches. Now, let's talk about the power. These things produce, depending on which model, the Ultra, which is a 16-inch, has 1,200 watts of output. This, which is the mid-size one, ends up outputting 1,600 watts. And then the Big Mac Daddy is 2,000 watts. So, depending on which one you get, determines what the output is. But this is the middle of the road. This is the Plus, and this is the 25-inch. Now, this one has all the buttons here on the front. And what you're going to see is you do actually get an equalizer button as well as your mode button, your on-off button, and volume buttons all built into this, as well as the Bluetooth if you need to get connectivity. Now, something else you're going to notice that is different on this is this has a pigtail that comes off the backup. Now, what I like about this is you get quite a few different options. You have your USB port, all right? You have an auxiliary in for a 3.5mm jack. Of course, you have your power, which, like we talked about earlier, is the standard type of power. But the other big thing is you also get a bass output. So if you want to add more bass to the system, you have a plug specifically for bass output, which makes it super nice. But I'm going to tell you, out of all the systems I've tested so far, this one has definitely had some of the most bass that we've heard. But that does lead me to the big Mambo Jumbo. Yes, the big 34-inch, because one of the issues that some people are probably going to run into with this soundbar system is that it requires 3, I say it requires, they send it with 3 mounts, okay? That's what they design it for. I'm going to tell you that with a lot of the Polaris, the way the roofs are designed, if you have a factory roof, is that there is a problem with putting a third one in the middle, because unless you do some modifications to your roof, there is a piece right in the way. Now, you do have a little bit of leniency of being able to move this a little bit, but generally, as fat as these are, you can't really put it there. So what I am suggesting, or what I do, I don't suggest you do because it's not designed that way, is I don't run the third one. Honestly, the mount systems you should be fine with too, but that is not recommended by any means. But let's talk about the good about this. This happens to be, yes, no, it's not 8 speakers. I'm just kidding. It's 10 speakers because we still have the 2 on the end. So this is a 10 speaker setup, 2,000 watts, and it is big. It is beefy, but at the same time, it's still petite. And that's one thing that I really like about all the K-Speaker stuff is that they produce a ton. Well, we're going to test these out in a minute. You're going to hear them. But I know for this fact that the K66PLUS produces a lot of sound. And for this size, I'm able to tuck it nicely up and out the way so it's not hanging down, blocking my passenger's views, hitting me in the back of the head. I don't have to worry about none of that. This tucks up really, really nice. And that's one of the things that I find really good that I like about them, not only for the amazing sound quality, but once again, we have the exact same thing that we have on the other K66, and you have your auxiliary in as well as your output for bass, you know, the whole shebang. Now, first up on this test, we're going to test out the loudness of each of these speakers. We want to see how loud each of these can get. In this case, we're going to start with the K100 Plus. Now, what we've got set up here is we've got our phone with a Decibel X app. We're going to place it here, and we're going to turn it all the way up as loud as it'll go, and just see what we actually get for the reading, and see how loud it gets.
You think you're so clever, you crack under pressure, and be put back together. Pay for next by the hour, no roots wilting flowers, now that you've been exposed. Oh my God, good grief, lost any sort of belief. Self-made authenticity, think I need a relief. Screaming out loud, I crash out. Oh my God, good grief, not far from tragedy.
Back on rock.
Red carpet inside me.
That's halfway.
You think you're so clever, you crack under pressure.